Hi everyone. Hey. Hello everyone. So today is a very special day because we will be joined by our partners from Apple, and this will be a webinar that will focus on remote teaching and learning. So I'd like also to do a recap on whatever we have done so far in our e-Skwela webinars. So I think last March we were able to start with when we started with the webinar, we were able to um, touch base with all the influencers and all those people that are involved in distance learning and e-learning, and we made, of course, close contact and built relationships with all these stakeholders. Aside from that, we had a dialogue with the Department of Education. So sa mga kasama po natin na kaguruan ng DepEd, magandang umaga. Of course, to our partners in the Commission on Higher Education, especially to the chairperson, Dr. Popoy de Vera. Thank you also for giving us the opportunity to have a dialogue with you. Of course, to our roster of all esteemed speakers, our speakers who have contributed a lot in the discussion, experts from Google Education, and of course the Lazal Sobel, the Sol College of St. Benilde. Of course, our parties from the Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities. Maraming salamat po. So today we are joined by Apple's leadership and education lead for the Philippines, Mr. Joe Sibayan. So can we let Joe in already in our webinar?
Good
Hi,
morning.
hi
Good
Joe.
morning,
Good
Mark.
morning. Good
And good
morning.
morning.
So kamusta ka?
I'm good. I'm good. This is first of all, I want to say thank you for organizing this event. I think it's very important that we provide avenues like this for all our educators to continue this conversation of how to manage learning in this challenging times. Thank you for this opportunity, Mark.
Okay. So it's okay. Sobrang honored kami to be with Apple today. So, Joe, what have you been doing simula nung start ng pandemic? Before we start with the actual discussion of course, the remote teaching and learning side, what have you done so far in terms of course, yung mga personal natin na mga plans na disrupt yan. So, ano yung mga ginagawa mo personally, and then of course, tell us something about your work.
Yeah, so I've been at home since March. Before COVID struck Manila, lagi akong nagta-travel. I always go to schools to visit schools and also collaborate with the wider education team of Apple in Southeast Asia, and Australia, New Zealand. And then all of a sudden that all stopped, and now locked in the house doing all the work from here. And as you know, the Philippine education system is facing a lot of challenges right now. So really busy with helping school leaders and teachers figure out how to make sure that learning continues. I wouldn't say that the dust has already settled, but at least for a number of our partner schools and educators, they were able to now continue learning. And a lot of them have opened the school year, but still a lot of work has to be done. And that's why conversations like this is very important.
Yes. At saka, guys, hindi nyo natatanong, Joe is also an educator like me. So, meron siyang experience in curriculum development, meron siyang experience in teacher training, and of course, as an administrator. So, all these things ay didiscuss ni Joe ngayon ay of course, will be helpful, of course, in terms of our e-learning initiatives and distance learning initiatives. And tayo naman sa Globe, we're always ready and open to help our institutions, public and private, and of course, our TVET programs. Just reach out to us in terms of making sure that, of course, education does not stop. So, birthday pa lang ngayon ni Joe. Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you,
so,
thank you.
so we were talking about that earlier, that as educators, walang birthday. Walang birthday, right?
I mean,
So as long as
as
we are
educators, we love what we do, and there's no better way to spend my birthday than be among like-minded educators like you and talk about how to surmount all of these challenges.
Okay. So I think without further ado, we'll start with the demo of Joe. So thank you, Joe, and take it away. So if you have questions, feel free to make sure that you type your comments on the comment section, and then we'll address all those your questions, all those questions later on.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I see that a lot of you are already on the chat and comment saying good morning. I really appreciate that. If you would like, you could also write what's your role and where you're joining us from. Just type it in the chat, and I'd love to see where everyone is from who are in this call. So, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today. Like what Mark said, my background is in education. I started out my teaching career as a preschool teacher. I did that for 3 years prior to setting up my own school, which grew from, with a couple of partners, which grew from a grade school to a full K to 12 school by the time that I joined Apple more than 5 years ago to help drive their education team. Somebody like me whose background is purely in education works for Apple because we believe that it's very important that technology has an impact in what teachers are able to do in the classrooms, and that can only happen if we have honest and open conversations with teachers. And so that's why I'm somebody like me is in Apple. But for today's purpose, I'm going to go way back into my background and tell you a story about when I was in grade six. I was a public school student. I wonder if any of you who's in this session right now are also products of the public school system, but I'm a proud product of the public school system. And when I was in grade six, I remember this one day where the principal, when the principal of our school came into the classroom, and then he said, I need volunteers. And of course, those of you who studied in public schools know that when a principal does that, you just raise your hand, right? Without knowing what you're going to be asked to do. And so some of us were selected. And since I'm not very tall, I always sit in front of the class. I was called. And then we were asked to go behind the truck and we started unloading these beige boxes. And it was actually the first time that I ever touched a computer in school. And then we were asked to bring up those computers to the second floor of our school building, where I noticed that the library sign was removed and it was replaced with Learning Resource Center. And then we placed the computers there. That was my first time to ever touch those computers. That was also my last time to ever touch and see them. Because for the rest of the year, the teachers were too scared to touch them. And of course, they also wouldn't let the students touch them because they themselves were scared. So fast forward to today, I've come full circle. My job is to make sure that wherever technology is present, that schools, educators, leaders are able to maximize them. So that's my main passion, and that's my part of what I will share with you today. So this is the agenda that I've set for the next hour, and then at the top of the hour, we'll do some Q&A. We'll get some of the questions that are coming in and address them. But we're going to touch on these three things. Number one is talk a little bit about Apple's vision for the future of learning, where we see the learning going towards in the future, now and in the future. And then I'll jump into um, a bit of a demo on some of the available tools for supporting remote teaching and learning. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the free resources that you, as an educator, could definitely take advantage of as you build your skills in being able to manage remote teaching and learning. So I hope this is okay. If this is okay, you can put a thumbs up in the chat. And this is what I will share with you today. But before anything else, I want to start off by showing you a quick video. This is a video that Apple created based on what we're seeing around the world of how humanity is coping and adjusting to the COVID challenge. So I hope you enjoy this video.
has the possibility of bringing us together in ways none of us would have been able to predict or expect.
I'm so small, said the mole. Yes, said the boy, but you make a huge difference.
I just love the message of that video, how creativity goes on for us in spite of these unprecedented times. And as educators, we also know that education goes on. And this is the spirit that inspires us in Apple whenever we see school leaders and teachers doing their best to make sure that learning continues. And this crisis that the education sector is going through is something that deeply concerns us at Apple. It deeply concerns us for many reasons. One is that because as a company, we've been in education since day one. So at Apple, we didn't just wake up one day and decided to, oh, okay, I think it's interesting to go into education. For us, since day one, working with teachers and school leaders has always been part of what we do. We always wanted to see what they're able to do with our technology. And it also concerns us very, very deeply because at Apple, our vision is to make sure that every learner is able to use technology to unlock their unique genius. And so, any challenge that stops learning is something that concerns us at our core. And it also concerns us because we know how great learning anytime, anywhere looks like through our work with schools and educators all over the world. And so we really want to make sure that schools are able to continue learning. And that is something that we see in our work with schools around the world, but also with the work that we do in schools in the Philippines. And I love this quote from one of the teachers that we work with. She is a science teacher in De La Salle Santiago Zobel School, and she's also a Metro Bank awardee. And she talks about how a piece of technology actually enabled her to engage her students more and even push them to develop these very important 21st century thinking skills. And for her, it made her teaching much more relevant for this new generation of students in front of them. And we now know and realize that moving forward, technology will play an even bigger role. And so that's what I want to share with you today is around what's happening in the world and what's our vision for the future of learning and how technology could help you create that relevant environment. So technology has created a lot of changes in the way we live. And right now, we have a greater appreciation of how technology can help us through lockdown, and it enables us to stay productive and do our work. It also helps us to learn, continue learning, and continue doing the things that we love to do. And this just highlights this shift that has happened around um, technology, and therefore it also created this shift around what is needed to be successful in the world today. If you take a look at this World Economic Forum study, they were saying that the skills in demand for 2 years from now are these list of skills, right? And these require a lot of higher order thinking skills, a lot of collaboration and um, a lot of being able to look at a complex issue, break it down, and then come up with solutions for it. And this is where technology really helps out a lot. Because if you take a look at the relevant jobs of the future, these are jobs that didn't even exist a couple of years ago. So we don't know by the time that the students that we work with graduate, we don't know what jobs they're gonna have, right? Because new jobs come up left and right. And so what we know as educators is that we need to therefore develop skills, right? These 21st century skills. Now, how do we create an environment that enables the development of those skills? For us, we see that the future of learning is going to have these four elements. Future of learning has to be connected, collaborative, creative, and personal. So let me quickly jump into each of them and talk about that a little bit. So a connected learning environment, what does that mean? It definitely means something more than just making sure that your students have access to content. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When I was in grade school, I remember how my teachers would get so upset every time somebody in the classroom would forget to bring their textbook, right? Because why? Because the textbook is where the content is. So without access to a textbook, what are you going to learn? And so a lot in those times, um, content is controlled by the printed material and controlled by the teacher. In today's world, we need to enable learners to have access to content anytime and anywhere so that they could learn. But a very important facet of connected learning is also making sure that every single learner has access. And that's why there's always a lot of those painful conversations around making sure that every single student in your school community and teacher has access to technology and all the solutions that are needed to make online learning happen. But also very important is to consider the individual learning needs of students in your school. For example, you might provide a link to a website, for example. But how about for students who are easily distracted by all of the visuals of a website? Or students who have difficulty with decoding, right? How are we able to make sure that all of the students in our midst are able to have access to high quality content and access to being able to learn from that content? And I hope to show you some of the solutions around that in my demo later. The future of learning is also collaborative, right? And I don't just mean here a simple group work. The true yardstick or measuring tool for whether a task is really collaborative or not is that if the task could actually be accomplished by one person or one student, then it's not a real collaborative task. Real collaboration happens when we push the learners to create something that's not possible to be created by only one person, where that requires actually working together, building relationships, and being able to come up with something that contributes to the world. And sometimes this also comes into the little decisions that we make. For example, I've had a lot of conversations with schools who are starting to select their video conferencing app of choice, for example. So one of the things that I always tell school leaders is that when you choose a video conferencing app, make sure that it's something that it produces high quality images. Why? Because in online learning, we lose that face-to-face touch, right? Obviously. So it's very important that the nuances of communication, facial expressions, slight adjustments in the faces of your peers is something that you could see right? Because that enables collaboration. That idea of being able to relate with others, see how they're feeling, empathize. Those are very important for collaboration. The future of learning has to also be creative, right? And so we have to make opportunities for students to be able to create things with technology. Technology can't be just something that you have so that you can consume content. You should also think about whether or not the technology that you choose to adopt or choose to use, even at a personal level, enables you to create things. And as teachers, this is also very important today because we now have that additional pressure of having to create digital content, right? Which we didn't have before. But now with remote learning or blended learning even, content creation is something that's a skill that teachers are now called to demonstrate, right? So you need to have a piece of technology that enables you to do those things and enables learners to create as well. And creativity is something that's very important in the world today and in the future. We've seen through research that teaching creativity enables students to achieve higher in test scores, and more importantly, that creativity is crucial in developing problem solving skills and critical thinking among students. And fourth, learning has to be personal. This means being able to create pathways wherein students are able to make a choice around how they are able to express their own understanding of a topic, for example, right? Are they able to produce things that really show their personal understanding and the depth of knowledge that they develop through the learning experiences that you design? And so in my demo today of some of the tools that we have at Apple around supporting teachers, this it will cut through these four elements of the future of learning: connected, collaborative, creative, and personal. And so what I'm going to use today to demonstrate some of these tools is the iPad. And the iPad is something that we created with learning in mind. It's something that, because of its features, makes it very useful and relevant in a teaching and learning situation. What makes the iPad powerful is the apps and the amount of creativity that you're able to bring into it. For example, in these three screenshots, you actually see three different apps. One is a word processing app. We have a spreadsheet app and a slide presentation app. But what's common around this is with the use of the iPad and, for example, the Apple Pencil, you can see how much creativity could actually come in and how much more personal the work actually becomes, right? Now, another great thing about the iPad that I appreciate is this whole idea that it's compatible with many different other platforms and apps. Um, the Google apps work very well on our devices, and so does Microsoft apps. Office 365 run very well on our device, and so in fact, it's the only device that could run Google apps, Microsoft apps, and the native Apple apps in a single machine. So you don't have to unlearn and relearn new things a lot too much when you're using the iPad, because a lot of the tools that you're familiar with you could actually use. And also add to that, given that this device is mobile and very powerful, you can do a lot of cool things with it. One of my favorite new developments is augmented reality in education, and this whole idea that you could turn a table into a mountainous ecosystem, just like what you're seeing on screen right now, and explore the interaction of the different parts of the environment, so that learners could now immerse themselves in a new way with content. So I've been talking a lot. So what I'll do now is I will actually jump into a quick demo on the device so that you could see some of the examples that will show how you could create um, a future of learning inspired environment in online teaching and remote learning. So you're now seeing on the screen my iPad, right? So what I'll do now is I'll demo first. Let's jump into the Notes app. So the Notes app is a free app on the iPad. And what this app usually is used for, as the name suggests, is for note taking. But one of the cool things that I use this for is whiteboarding. So you've noticed at the bottom, you will see that you have access to all of these tools. And what you're able to do here is use the pen so that you could do your whiteboarding or blackboarding, right? But do it in a digital way so that you have access to all of these different tools so that you could continue to do the thing that you already are familiar in doing, such as writing on a board as you are speaking and being able to explain ideas to your learners. And this is a very basic move that as teachers that we need to still be able to do even if it's online learning, right? Being able to write as you discuss, right? Because it's a very powerful teaching move in direct instruction. One of the things that you could do in in the Notes app also is you could actually insert lines and grids in the background so that as you're teaching, if you need a little bit more guidance with lines in because of whatever content you're teaching, you could definitely do so, right? And be able to do that. One of my favorite things here as well is the ability to then share this out. So I could send this out in an email, in a message, right? Or I could save this as an image. And what I have now is the capability to not only do whiteboarding, but also send out my whiteboarding to all of my learners, right? So they now have a copy of what we've discussed. And if you run out of space, all you have to do is scroll down and you have more space. It's like an endless digital whiteboard that you could use. And in fact, it's a powerful way to create content. Very easy. With just a tap of a button, you already have an image that you could share with your learners. Now, the other thing that I love to do is sometimes as teachers in a digital environment, you have a photo that you want to discuss, right? And so I could have my whiteboard on one side of the screen, and then I could bring up my photo on the other side of the screen in the Photos app. Let's say I'm discussing about the skeletal system, right? And I could bring up the same tools that I have on the Notes app, right? So that I could do some side by side. Um, I could do some side by side explanation of something that's happening on one side of the screen while I am explaining something on the other side. So I could be writing things here, explaining about joints. And then on the other side of the screen, I could be writing down my my whiteboarding, right? And doing a whiteboarding on the other side of the screen, right? So now I have a breakdown of my whiteboard on one side and my piece of content on the other side of the screen. So very powerful way to engage learners and make sure that you're continuing to do the things that are somehow familiar, but very much enhanced by technology, right? The other thing that is very powerful for remote learning is this whole idea of being able to scan a document, right? Because as teachers, we need to be able to quickly create digital content. And a lot of times that means scanning a worksheet, for example, or a task sheet, and then being able to send that out. And sometimes you don't have a digital version of it. We have a print out version. So what I opened now on my iPad screen is the Files app. So the Files app is where all of your files from on your iPad and on the cloud will be found. So if you have any cloud account that you use and your school uses, it would appear here and you'd have access to all those content and also some of the content on your device, right? So it's where all of your files are organized. But one of the cool things you could do in the Files app is to actually scan. And so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to turn on the scanner. And I want you to notice one. This is my table right now. Sorry, it's a little messy. But one of the things that you notice is that it detects the piece of document, which right now is a post-it. And notice how I am scanning it at an angle. So it's not really a flat document, right? It's I'm scanning it at an angle, but I want you to notice what happens when I scan it. It actually flattens the document, right? So no more difficulty of having to adjust and make sure that you have the corners perfectly because this scan function on the Files app actually does that for you, right? And you can go ahead and save that and you have your scanned document, which you could now share by email, put it into a specific app that you have. Um, for example, here you have Google Classroom, or send this through a messaging app or through Microsoft Teams, for example, and be able to share that digital content that you just created. And one of the cool things also is that from here, you could actually bring up the same markup tools that we saw a while ago so that you could actually start to annotate the piece of content, right? And so imagine being able to scan a piece of text, for example, that you have um, at home and being able to annotate it before sending out to your students, right? That's quite powerful and interesting. So those are some of the tools that you could use as a teacher that is very easy for your disposal to enable remote teaching. The next bit that I'm going to talk to you about is managing text, right? What are some of the tools that are available when it comes to managing text, right? I'm just going to do a quick drink of water. So a lot of times as teachers, especially in this remote learning environment, one of the things that we usually assign to students is a website, right? We want them to access a website because it has good content. This is one example. This is planetforkids.org, an article about Saturn. And if you remember, I told you a while ago about connectedness and making sure that we address every learner in our midst. If you give this website to somebody who's easily distractible, for example, they would have a hard time navigating this. Just look at the amount of ads that are on this page. Remember, this is an educational kids site, and you see that there's so many ads here, right? And a lot of times you don't have control of what ads actually appear, right? And so that's also is a bit of a risk. Now, I'm going to introduce you to a feature of the Safari browser on the iPad that eliminates all distractions, and it's called Reader View. So I'm going to Okay, you see the yellow dot on the screen right now? That's actually me using a mouse. So yes, you could use a Bluetooth mouse on the iPad. So this is also helpful when you're trying to point out things when you are doing some remote teaching, for example. So I'm gonna tap into here, and then I'm gonna tap on Show Reader View. I want you to notice what happens to the website. Did you see that? All the distractions disappeared. Let me do that again. Let's go to the original site and let's turn on Reader View. All of the ads disappeared and you're just left with all of the relevant text and images that actually will enable you to learn from the content of the site. And some of the things you could do, you could change the background color, change the font. For example, if you're dealing with students in your class that have dyslexia, for example, you don't want to use anything that has a lot of serif on it. You could also increase the font size or decrease it. And one of my favorite things to do is to take a screenshot of this. So to do that, I'll just swipe my Apple Pencil from the lower corner and take a screenshot. So now I have a screenshot of the website. But one of the cool things now is that you could actually take a full page screenshot. Now, what does that mean? I want you to notice the scrolling tab at the corner. If you take a full page screenshot on Safari on iPad, you actually take a screenshot of the entire page, right? So no more having to take, because how we used to do this before was like take a screenshot of the first page, take a screenshot of the second page, and then find a way to stitch them together or just send out 12 images, right? But now with just one screenshot, you already have access to a PDF file that captures all of the content, right? And you could, again, save this to file so that you have a copy of the PDF file. And the great thing is that it's PDF, so it could be opened in any platform that your colleagues or your students might use. You could definitely open this on a Windows machine or an Android machine as well. So again, compatibility, it won't be much of an issue. But what I also like here is that notice how the same set of tools are available here so that you could annotate the text. You could do some highlighting. You know, my issue with highlighting is that I never highlight straight. So I could just use the ruler so that I could um, use that as a guide when highlighting. Very useful tool, right? And then I could go ahead and then save this to files on my iPad, rename this as Saturn Reading, right? And then it's going to be saved on my Files app, right? So there, that's screenshot. One of the other things that I love about dealing with text on the iPad is that you have a lot of other tools that you could use. For example, I could touch on the word galaxy and tap on lookup. And what this gives me is the capability to access a lot of tools, dictionary, some suggested websites, etc., without having to leave the app, right? Without having to open a separate app to be able to do that. I could also do things such as select a part of the text and have it read to me.
Each time you look up to the sky and see a star, you are looking at a sun in another galaxy. If you were on another planet looking back at our solar.
So very cool, especially for learners who have difficulty with decoding or they just want to receive feedback on whether they read the word correctly. This tool is very powerful to be able to do that. One of the things that I use this for is every time I write a memo or a letter, I do speak selection and I have the text read back to me so that I'm sure that it sounds well. The other things I use as in online teaching and learning is the zoom function. So every time I have a piece of text, for example, or images and I want to highlight something, I could just bring up a magnification tool and emphasize part of the screen, right? So that I could make sure that um, my learners are engaged. I could be talking about the rings, the moons of Saturn, for example, and I could really draw attention to the part of the content that's relevant for my learners. So those are just some tools that you could use to be able to manage content and text specifically with the iPad. The other thing I'm going to show you is how do you now create multimedia content, right? So one of the easiest ways to create digital content is to take a photo, right? Take a picture. So let me just quickly do that now. I'm going to open up my camera and I'll just take a quick photo of what's in front of me right now, my mug. So you could imagine that as a teacher, you could take a photo of a science teacher, for example, you take a photo of a plant in your garden or any piece of content that you actually want to take a photo of. And one of the things that you could do here is again bring up those set of markup tools that you have so that you could start to annotate your photos, right? So you could do things such as write on this, emphasize parts of the photo, label it if you wanted to, right? And write there coffee, for example. And then when you're done, you could then export this and share this out to your students. So again, very quick and easy, powerful way to create relevant digital content. The other thing I want to show you is how easy it is to actually create um, video content. So I'm going to jump into this free app called Clips, right? And Clips is a video creation tool. So for example, I want to be able to bring in the skeleton, for example, right? And be able to discuss this. So all I have to do is press on the red dot and it starts recording what I'm saying. And so I could say, this is a photo of the skeletal system, right? And then it becomes part of the video, right? The other thing I could do is I could bring in some of my whiteboarding, for example. And what I want to do here specifically for this is I want what I'm saying to appear on the screen. So I could turn on live titles and whatever I say will actually appear as text on the screen. So I could do something like, this is my work, right? And whatever you say will become part of the video, right? And so it's a very easy and quick way to create content that has all of your materials on it. And when you're done, again, just like before, many different ways of sharing this piece of content. I'm going to show you two more free apps on the iPad that uses that it will enable you to create digital content. And one of that is this app called Pages. So let me open up Pages. So the Pages app is a word processing app, but one of my favorite things to do here is to actually create books, right? So let me just open up this template, for example. And because it's a template, it's going to be very easy for me to be able to create text material that is digital in nature. Let me just restart that. Oops, let me open this up. And let's see. So this is the template that I chose. And let's say I want to create a piece of content for my students. I could easily open up Safari on one side, for example, and I have that content already. And all I have to do is pick up that image, drop that in, get a piece of text, for example, and bring that here. Of course, I have to make sure that I actually can do that, that it's not a licensed piece of content, right? So that I could make sure that I am using something that I have a license to use, right? But very easily, I am able to integrate a piece of content from the internet into something that I am creating, right? So I could also do things such as insert my own drawings, right? So let me just quickly choose a color, and I could insert a drawing here. And then I could change that, change the layout behavior of that so that it looks much better. I could also do things such as insert my own audio. This is Saturn, and record that in, right? And bring that into this document. And then if you notice, I could now export this in different formats. I could export it as a PDF, but my favorite thing to do is to export it as EPUB, right? And EPUB is sort of the industry standard universal format for electronic books that could be opened not only on Apple devices but on many other platforms as well. So imagine that with a free app like Pages, you now have the capacity and the tools to be able to create your own EPUB, right? So imagine the power of being able to bring in your own content, bring in your own explanation to that content, and then provide access to students for that. The last app I'm going to show you, and this is also a free app, is this app called Keynote. This is a slide presentation app, but some of the things that you could do here, I'm gonna show that to you really quickly. So let's start off with a very basic layout. Let's say let's do a let's do a basic black document, for example. And what you're going to be able to do here is to create your own pieces of animation that you could now export with your explanation. So let's say I want to do a quick, um, maybe we did skeletal system a while ago. Let's do heart. And what I'm doing is I'm inserting a shape that's already preloaded on the app. And let's say I want to demonstrate the flow of a red blood cell through the heart. So for those of you who are, I'm not a science teacher. For those of you who are a science teacher, you could confirm if I'm going to do this correctly. But this is just demo purposes. So let's change the color of that to red, and then let's animate this. And what I want to do here is I want to create a path for the red blood cell. I don't know if this is correct, but that's how I think it goes. And when I tap on done, what I've done actually is I've created with very few taps an animation that explains a concept that I want my students to understand, right? And I could also do things such as write down some explanations, and even my handwriting I could actually animate. I'm using line draw, which traces my handwriting. And now I have this video. I could actually export this as a video that shows my explanation, and I could record my own voice into this as well. And with a few taps, I already have digital content that's relevant, that has my own voice as a teacher in it, and I'm able to share that to my students, right? So you could also imagine the type of things that students are going to be able to do with this, and the type of creativity and personalization that they're going to be able to do when they have access to these very creative tools, right? So those are just some of the tools that are available that you could use for remote teaching, to manage text, and to create multimedia content. So I'm going to quickly go back to sharing my slide presentation and transition to talking a little bit about some of the resources that are available that could help you in your journey as you build your skills, and set of toolkits to use in remote or blended teaching. First, I want to talk a little bit about this amazing program that we have called Apple Teacher, right? If you're not yet an Apple Teacher, today is the best time for you to register for this and start learning. So, Apple Teacher runs on a browser, so you could access it on any browser. And what it is that it's a free professional learning program that delivers tips and inspiring real world examples. And it's also a space where you can learn the fundamentals of how to use the iPad and the Mac in teaching and learning. So what happens is first, when you come in, you already have access to all of these amazing pieces of content, and then you start your learning journey. It's a self-paced. You learn some new skills. You take a quiz, some quizzes, and then you earn badges, which leads you to earn the ultimate gold star of being an Apple teacher. And you are given a badge that you could then use. And so, if you, like I said, if you haven't signed up for this, please make sure to sign up with appleteacher.apple.com and start your learning journey. For those of you who are looking for other resources, Apple has created this resource site to enable you to teach and learn from any distance. So the apple.com/education/K12/learn from home. And what we've done is we've put all of the resources that we have that can support remote learning onto this site. So from websites, app collections, support pages, social media accounts that you could follow, hashtags that you could follow, so that you get a lot of these ideas. They're all here on this site. So, and if you're a school leader and you're in this meeting, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me or with the Globe team, so we can continue to have these conversations. At Apple, we support school leaderships in creating technology programs and creating strategic plans. We also support IT teams in the deployment of devices, and we definitely support teachers in their professional development so they can maximize the use of technology. So I'm going to leave you off with this. I hope you found that today's session was helpful in terms of being able to um, see some ideas of how you could use Apple technology in creating a learning environment online that's collaborative, that's connected, that's personal, so that you are able to continue learning for your students, but also do that in a way that's relevant and impactful for today and the future. So with that, thank you so much for your time. I think we're ready to transition to some Q&A if there are any questions.
Hey, thank you, Joe, for those insights and a very informative talk.
Thank you,
What I
Mark.
really like about this is the fact that you do not necessarily need to, of course, access all these information into several devices or into several websites. It's just one tool that you can use, and then everything is there. Um, Actually, one of the questions that is asked in terms of this particular initiative would be, of course, first, teacher discount when purchasing Apple devices. Again, guys, you can get in touch with our Globe team or email education@globe.com.ph for for the purchases. If your institution wants to purchase iPads or any other Apple devices, but Joe, can you clarify? Do we offer special discounts to teachers and educators as well as students?
Yes, we do have education pricing that is extended to teachers, school leaders, and learners.
Um, Another question here, because you were doing your demo using your gadget, using the iPad as your gadget. Um, what model daw yung iPad na ginamit mo?
Oh,
and
yeah.
and how did you share the camera and share an iPad screen all at the same time? So it's done only with one device, right?
It's done only with one device. So I'm using this. This is I'm currently using an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, but even with an entry level iPad 7th gen, you could definitely use a pencil. And even our older models, you could such as the iPad 6th gen, you could definitely use a pencil on that and do all of the things that I showed you because on the iPad. Um, those iPads and this iPad, they run the same operating system. So all of the apps will look the same in iPad 6th gen, 7th gen, or iPad Pro, as long as you're in the latest operating system. And one of the great things about um, uh, Apple is that we support very devices for a very long time. So even devices that were bought a number of years ago, you could still install iOS 13 on them as well, so that you could use all of the features that I just showed you. Now the other question was around being able to share on the device. Well, I'm able to do that because the Zoom app runs very well on the iPad and on our operating system. And so all I did was join the call on my iPad using the Zoom app and then share my screen. And everything that happens on the screen is seen on the call. And so I could bring up my camera, point out the things, and whatever is on my screen is exactly what's going to be seen on the call.
Okay, how can I avail of a teacher discount and where and how much is the discount?
Talk to Mark.
So guys,
I do not sell the devices directly. We work with partners such as Globe to do that. So yeah, talk to
guys, you can get in touch with us. Just email education@globe.com.ph for your increase on the student discount and of course, for the teachers discount. Um, will this run also perfectly with MS Teams? I think I can answer this. So, the iPad or any other Mac device runs perfectly with Microsoft, with Google for education, with GC for education, of course. MS Teams is part of the Microsoft 365 suite, and both of them are partners as well of Globe. So, uh, no, we don't join Zoom with two accounts. We just join Zoom with just one account. I'm actually online with in my other device, in my iPad, and in my Dell computer. So there. Anything else? Mostly discount, because I think one of the reasons why they're asking is school is already a few weeks away from now, and I think at this point, parents and teachers are very much particular when it comes to using durable devices and devices that really last. And this is something that we can prove that Apple products are very sturdy. So I've been using my iPad for 3 years now and still good as brand new. So
And one
there.
of the things that I think is really important is that if the device will be the gateway to learning for our students, they must use a device that they actually love to use, that they actually like. And I think that's one of the things that's great if you're able to integrate learning into a device that learners love, like the iPad, because it makes learning something that they love to engage in, rather than a chore, because they love to use that the conduit or the technology that they're using.
Right. Okay. So I guess we're okay for today. And if you have questions, yes, you can flash the email. I already replied to some of those inquiries on the Facebook chat. It's education at globe.com.ph. I'll be personally replying to your emails and we'll be endorsing you to the account managers. Um, Stay safe, everyone. Joe, stay safe. Thank you so much for taking part in this discussion. Maraming salamat. At sa ating mga teachers dyan, kay e-Skwela, I'll see you in 2 weeks. We have more things to come. We will be helping you also in marketing your school. So that's something that you would like to hear on the 14th. So we'll be helping, of course, our institutions to make sure that enrollment is up. I know that it's been very challenging, most especially for our private school sector, but of course for our public school sector, what's more challenging would be, of course, accommodating all those training programs and of course the number of students that are enrolling. Um, to the DepEd and of course to the state colleges and universities. So I'll see you guys there. We hope to see you again in our next installment of e-Skwela. Thank you and stay safe at home. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.